Blackburn Triplane. The single-seat triplane fighter built by Blackburn Airplane and Motor Corporation, Limited, in 1916 was designed by Harris Booth, who had left the Air Department of the Admiralty to join the Blackburn Company. Although rather less bizarre than the AD Scout of Booth's design, the Blackburn triplane inherited a number of the Sparrow's characteristic features. As on the AD Scout, the tail booms of the triplane were parallel in plan and side elevation, and the two tall fins and rudders were surmounted by a tailplane of unusually large span. The tail skids were attached to the lower ends of the rudders. All three mainplanes were of equal span and all had ailerons. The control surfaces were interconnected by wooden strut-like components. The aileron control cables actuated the ailerons on the middle wing. Ground clearance of the bottom wing was small. Consequently, skids were fitted under the wingtips. The nacelle was an ugly affair, with a long, deep nose that must have restricted the pilot's field of view. At the front of the nacelle there was a large orifice that so closely resembled the corresponding part on the AD Scout that it is reasonable to assume that, like the Sparrow, the Blackburn triplane was intended to carry a Lewis machine gun. Sketches depict a Lewis gun mounted on top of the nacelle immediately in front of the cockpit, but it is doubtful whether the triplane was ever armed in this way. Only one aircraft, N502, was built. It was powered at different times by the 110 horsepower Clerget and the 100 horsepower Gnome monosopape rotary engines. It seems probable that the Clerget was the first to be fitted. It drove a 4-blade air screw. The monosopape had a 2-blade air screw. Various performance figures have been attributed to the Blackburn triplane. One source quotes an impossible maximum speed of 115 miles per hour. Another gives a speed range of 45 to 100 miles per hour. Yet another, a range of 53 to 112 miles per hour. It is doubtful whether the aircraft could in fact exceed 90 miles per hour. The manufacturer's trials are believed to have been flown from York Racecourse. Shortly afterwards, the aircraft was sent to Eastchurch, where it was accepted on the 20th of February 1917. It failed to find favor and was written off as unsatisfactory on 19th March 1917. The Boulton and Paul P3 Bobolink. The Norwich Company of Boulton and Paul, Limited, were one of the many firms whose resources and facilities had to be added to those of the infant British aircraft industry soon after the outbreak of the war. From making F-2Bs and 2Ds, they progressed to Sopwith Camels and became a major contractor for that type. In 1918, the first aircraft of Boulton and Paul design appeared. Designed by J.D. North, it was a single-seat fighter powered by a 230 horsepower Bentley BR2 rotary engine, and intended to be a replacement for the Sopwith Camel. References and surviving records are confusing, but it seems that there may have been two designs having the type numbers P3 and P5. The serial numbers C8655 and C8657 only were allocated for Boulton and Paul P5 Hawk aircraft. But only the 8655 was completed and is officially recorded as a P3 Bobolink. It was a two-bay biplane of good appearance, characterized by N-type interplane struts. The basic airframe was the usual wire-braced wooden structure. It followed contemporary Sopwith practice in general, and the engine supports were similar to those of the Camel. Armament consisted of two fixed Vickers guns, and in accordance with Airboard Specification A1A, there was provision for a Lewis gun above the center section. The fuel tanks, which were immediately behind the cockpit, could be jettisoned in an emergency. To this end, connections to the tanks were made by glass tubing. The first aircraft, C8655, was completed late in December 1917. But had to wait until January 1918 for its engine. After maker's trials, it arrived at Martlesham Heath, where it was initially recorded as the Boulton and Paul Hawk, on the 21st of February. Not until the 9th of March did Martlesham refer to the aircraft as the Bobolink, misspelt as Bobolink. When C-8655 first appeared, it had ailerons on the upper wings only. But by the time it reached Martlesham Heath, ailerons had been added to the lower wings. Upper and lower ailerons were interconnected by strut-like links. Martlesham was not impressed by the Bobolink. The addition of ailerons to the lower wings suggested inadequate lateral control, but the modification was still not remedy enough, for the official report on the aircraft said, "The maneuverability of this machine is not good, for which reason it is not considered that it would make a good fighter without modification." The Bobolink was returned to its makers on the 15th of March, 1918. It seems that Boulton and Paul did not immediately abandon the type, for C-8655 was subsequently fitted with a horn-balanced rudder, and the connections between upper and lower ailerons were cables in place of the earlier light struts. With the Snipe in production, there could be no hope of any reprieve for the Bobolink, however, and its development ceased.